Oh, you know all the right things to say.
A friend of mine was a golfer at Lake Mary, and she was great, and believe me, she wasn't like eating afterwards at all, it was like just a gill, et cetera. It's good.
Yeah, sorry, I thought you were
Saying
talking
that
about
all the time,
that.
and I've talked to especially with our generation.
We'll get started. Welcome to the June 9th, 2025 Site Plan Review Committee Subgroup Meeting for the Inn of Rosslyn project. We will be holding a hybrid public meeting which enables remote electronic participation as legally authorized by the Code of Virginia per the Planning Commission's electronic meeting policy adopted on July 7th, 2022. Members of the SPRC subgroup for the Inn of Rosslyn project are participating both here in person and virtually through electronic means. At this time, I'd like to orient everyone to our hybrid environment and cover a few specifics ahead about how tonight's meeting will run. Members of the public may attend the meeting here in person or electronically by using the Microsoft Teams link provided on the SPRC webpage, the project webpage, the county's event calendar, and the email notifications sent to the SPRC email subscribers. Additionally, there is a dial-in phone option for those who wish to use it. For our subgroup members joining virtually, if anyone loses internet connectivity during today's meeting, please reconnect with us by phone. Please keep your phones and devices muted until you're called upon. Turn off sound to any other devices around you to minimize interference. For our virtual attendees using Microsoft Teams, please turn off your video feed. I will address when it is appropriate to turn it on in a moment. The Microsoft Teams meeting chat is active to serve two purposes: for SPRC subgroup members who need technical assistance and for members of the public to add their names to the list for public comment, which will be taken at the end of the meeting. The Teams chat should not be used for discussion. Those who are planning to provide public comment will still need to do so at the end of the meeting, as the chat will not serve as that opportunity. All public comments must be shared verbally for the record during the assigned public comment period.
You want to take attendance?
Yeah, let's just go around the room and don't go too fast because I'm going to try to check you off this sheet. We'll start on this side.
Sure. Nicholas Cummings, Walsh Colucci. I'm the land use attorney on the project.
Just launched with Walsh Colucci, another land use attorney.
I'm Mike Workowski. I'm with Wells and Associates, engineers.
Jeff Traps with FICA, we're doing civil engineering.
Ben Carter, Davis Carter Scott, architects for the project.
Yes, and the other Davis Carter Scott, lead designer on the project for Davis Carter Scott.
Tyler Fink, Studio 39, landscape architecture, lead landscape designer on the project.
Josh Olson, Monument Realty, yeah.
Stuart Stein, I live in the Randolph Meyer Heights area.
Go back to this side of the table.
Hi, I'm Doug Snowenboss. I'm with the Climate Change, Energy and Environment Commission.
I'm Katie Thompson. I'm also with the Climate Change, Environment and Energy Commission. I'm Doug's alternate.
I'm Alex Foster with the Historic and Landmark Review Board.
Leslie Alminsky, representing Ray Farm, Bradford, Fort Meyer Heights Civic Association.
Peter Early with the Park Commission.
My name is Tony Striner with the Planning Commission.
Emily Peterson, Planning Commission.
Sergio Viticucea, Development Services Bureau.
Peter Schultz with the Planning Division. Let's go on. Do we have SPRC members online?
Yes, Carolyn Haynes, Forestry and Natural Resource Commission.
Thank you, Carolyn. Anybody else online?
Eric Goodman, and I'm with the Pedestrian Advisory Committee.
You, Eric?
And we had, you can maybe mark the raise your hand. Joe Ventrone, can you speak, or maybe you, if you can't, yeah, we can't hear you. Maybe use the phone number to call in. At least so we can hear your voice when you comment, or raise your hand whenever you have, you want to speak or something like that. We'll figure things out. That's from the
Yeah, this I might just raise my hand. This is David Judd with Studio 39 Landscape Architecture as well. I'm remote.
okay. David's gonna chime in for like 3 landscape slides. Okay. So one of our presenters.
This is Kathy Lawson. I'm also on the phone. Davis Carter Scott, Director of Sustainability and the lead consultant on the project.
I'm Peter Robertson, a member of the Planning Commission and chair of this SPRC. So
I think one thing we should remind is that if there's a couple, welcome from the to the C2E2, but generally our procedures is one person speaks and the other person can do at the public comment. We'll have.
Okay, Peter, you want to go the rules?
Yeah.
Yep.
After that, okay, you see our agenda tonight. The applicant is going to follow my presentation with the changes that they have made based on comments at the previous meeting. But our main topics, we will talk about those, but hopefully we can also stay on track on our main topics, which is going to be parking and transportation, green building sustainability, and site features and amenities. So that is usually a very brief discussion, ways that they can earn their additional density. And then public comment period. And for those who online want to sign up for public comment, just drop your name in the chat. Say that you would like to have a public comment, and then we'll get to you during the public comment period. And then after that, we'll just tell you about the process and next steps. Just to remind everybody, this is the Inn of Rosslyn site plan application, and its location here at the edge of the Fort Myers Heights North Special Planning District. So across the street is Rosslyn. So on the west side of Pierce Street is what we call the Fort Myers Heights North Special Area. And there was a plan developed for this area. And that is what staff has evaluated the application against. And you see the existing site. The proposed development, just to refresh everybody's memories, an 8-story residential building. This is a slightly out of date photo. I apologize. The applicant will show you some changes to the architecture that they had made since then. Approximately 142 units, 7-story stick over concrete construction. This again is what staff is using to evaluate the plan. The Fort Myers Heights North Area Plan was developed in 2008, but it is of course still applicable today. There are other county policies as well. But this one is the most detailed guidance for what we have for this site. And at the previous meeting, just to recap, we had talked about area plan architectural and site layout guidance, of which I've highlighted some language from the plan here that there should be a cohesive design vocabulary to promote the historical character of Fort Myers Heights North. It does say it should have elements, patterns, and colors drawn from or inspired by the Colonial Revival and Art Deco style garden apartments of the neighborhood. And that site design should largely replicate and building placement the garden apartment aesthetic of open lawns and numerous hardwood and ornamental trees. Substantial landscape green space should be provided on this particular site according to the plan. And again, just refreshing everybody from the previous architectural guidances, that could go up to 12 stories on this site. In the Fort Myers Heights North Area Plan, there were 2 scenarios. alternative A and an alternative B. And I said this, those of you who want to refresh your memory at the previous meeting. If there was a full block redevelopment scenario and a redevelopment scenario where the hotel did not get incorporated with the neighboring redevelopment. Well, that is what happened. The neighboring redevelopment happened very closely and hews very closely to the area plan, thereby leaving this one parcel, which could be up to 12 stories. And it's also the highest density and highest height permitted in the sector plan. I should say area plan. It's not a sector plan like a transit station plan. And again, one of the major criteria, well, this is just an illustrative. It is not, meant to be taken as a literal guidance for what should be there. Again, the guidance for the site was that there should be a substantial landscaped green space provided on the site. And at least, staff has stated to the applicant, we're open and flexible on locations and size. It doesn't have to exactly replicate. Illustratives are merely just for but it has to, again, with all that written guidance, in some way reflect the garden aesthetic.
So I'll now talk about a bit of transportation. The site is well supported by a variety of multimodal transportation options. It sits directly across from the Arlington Boulevard Trail, offering a convenient pedestrian and bicycle access along Route 50 in both directions. Multiple Capital Bike Share stations are also located nearby, including one across Route 50. You just have to cross the overpass. Regarding public transit and Metro Rail, it's located within a half-mile of the site, provides access to the orange, blue, and silver lines. And you can also find WMATA bus routes there. The nearest ART transit stop is on Road Street, which is very close by as well. And as Peter mentioned, the key policy documents guiding transportation for this site include primarily the MTP, but also the Fort Myers Heights North Plan. In terms of site access, it's provided via two north-south streets, North Queen Street and then also North Pierce Street. North Queen Street provides access to loading and trash services, while Pierce Street offers access to the site's garage. The applicant is proposing 57 residential parking spaces, which reflects a 0.4 parking ratio, along with 8 designated visitor spaces. Bicycle storage is also being proposed by the applicant on the level P1 of the garage with 57 secure spaces and 3 short-term bike parking spaces available on the streets adjacent to the site. In terms of streetscape improvements for Fairfax Drive, ultimately it will have a 22-foot wide cross-section. After the county project is completed, the county is going through a trail improvement project for the Arlington Boulevard Trail trail. Along the site's frontage, the applicant is proposing a new streetscape that includes an 8-foot wide clear sidewalk and also a 5-foot wide tree zone along the north side of Fairfax Drive. For Pierce Street, the street width along North Pierce Street will remain unchanged. However, the applicant is enhancing the streetscape to include a 6-foot wide sidewalk and a 5-foot wide tree zone. A new driveway apron will be constructed on North Pierce Street to provide access to the residential garage. And then for Queen Street, it will be narrowed to 23.5 feet wide, still accommodating 2 lanes, one in the north direction, one in the southbound direction. And then the applicant is proposing an improved streetscape featuring a 5-foot wide sidewalk and a 5-foot wide tree zone. Like the other streets, a new driveway apron will be constructed on North Queen Street to serve the building's loading docks.
With regard to green building, the applicant will tell you more about that. There's no specific green building recommendations in the area plan. So we are using the usual incentive program that we have successfully implemented, and it's at the 0.25 FAR level. So I'll be at the lowest level, but it still is the equivalent to LEED gold, and it also has Arlington. These programs have been modified for Arlington specific energy savings goals. As you can see there, I'm not going to read them all, but it is not just merely weed, it's also corresponded to our community energy plan. And that is one of the ways the applicant is requesting additional density, so 0.25 FAR. Other site features and amenities associated with additional density, as I said, the Green Building Incentive Program at 0.25 FAR. We have yet to CPHD staff begin the discussion. It usually goes rather quickly, but most likely, unless we hear otherwise from site features and amenities to earn additional density from this site would probably include committed on-site affordable units. Again, the area plan does not specify that as a goal, but that is through all our other county plans and policies a significant goal. But there are other ways the applicant could earn additional density, including off-site, equivalent off-site transportation improvements and the like. But that is usually done on larger projects like this. The public process and schedule, we are at the second SPRC meeting. There's traditionally 2 SPRC meetings for relatively smaller site plan review projects. The public hearings, probably the applicant has requested that they would like the September public hearing cycle, which would start with Planning Commission, Transportation Commission, probably Housing Commission if there is an affordable housing component on the site in September, and then County Board action at their September County Board meeting. Again, this is posted on the website. This will lead you to the project webpage where I'll put in the eventually the dates of the commission meetings as they become available. This is contact information. Staff, thank you very much.
Okay.
We are,
Presentation.
yep. So if Jess, you want to put that up and I'll just start talking. So our last meeting was generally, I would say, a positive meeting. There were some things to address, but there was no real major concern with the project. I think one reason why the meeting was generally positive is because we are clearly hitting the major area plan recommendations. Go to the next slide, Jess. Say that 30 seconds early. It's a lag between the computer and the internet. It's a series of tubes. So these are some, area plan wide goals, and they include construction of affordable housing units, and our project includes as many as potentially 14 on-site affordable units, especially with the benefits package that Peter was beginning to discuss. Preservation of tree cover and enhancement of streetscapes with shade trees. The current site has no trees, but we're adding 14 new trees with the new streetscape. Provision of public and private open space. We previously included planters along Pierce Street. We've expanded those planting areas. They are now 10 feet wide, wrapping around the entrance and moving up North Pierce Street. That's going to be the main thrust of this follow-up presentation. I think you're going to see a lot that you're going to like. An improved neighborhood edge and pedestrian-oriented streetscapes along Fairfax Drive. We create that urban edge on Fairfax Drive just as planned. It's especially the case if you take into account the red line just down the street, and so you now have that urban edge going quite a distance. Provision of adequate parking using creative strategies, a bit of a blast from the past from 2008, but we are doing that, making maximum use of parking area with compact parking spaces, given the challenges with the bedrock and excavation. So we're planning on presenting 3 main things today: the design changes we made since the last meeting, sustainability and landscape architecture, as well as transportation. So I'm going to summarize a bit of what we've heard from the last meeting and how we've responded. So the more significant issue that we discussed related to site design was the private open space on Pierce Street. As a reminder, I'm going to go through the plan of it here. As a reminder, there is a single sentence in the area plan, a caption to a picture that references private open space being included on this parcel, depending on how the parcel to the north developed, with another sentence in the plan stating that open spaces should echo the garden apartment aesthetic with lawns, with plantings, framing units. We've been meeting with board members on this project as well as others, and one with a legal background actually pointed out when we discussed this with them that it says should and not shall. And this is an opportunity to remind everyone the area plan is a policy document that we try to comply with as much as possible, but deviations are seen on almost every single project as the reality on the ground runs into the schematic language in the drawings of the plan. Plan was also adopted in 2008, 17 years ago. It was not detailed enough to address a number of the significant real constraints of our parcel, like the small size of it, the fact that it's not square, the steep topography, and the bedrock close to the surface, which makes excavating for their parking for even more units or more height much more difficult. It also doesn't speak to our current housing crisis, with rents growing at 7 to 8% annually, well above the national average. It does speak, however, to affordable housing, which is a critical need that we are meeting through various policy initiatives we're satisfying on site. Go to the next slide. Perhaps because it's not clear in the area plan, the private open space was also not necessarily the same issue, and I present this for context. When we started this whole process years ago, 4 years ago, we had initial conversations with staff. We were discussing solving for the space with something, above grade, like the amenity space and rooftop plantings, or with a 5 to 8 foot planted area near the building, which we were then told didn't work in part because of the building functions overhanging and interrupting it. Suffice to say, the project has obviously been a challenge. That was a theme of what I was presenting last time, and it's still a theme today. But with feedback from staff that this space needed to be bigger and free from overhangs, we dug deep and we were able to cut the building back further, losing valuable square footage and density, but to create a bigger and better space. And you can see the current proposal all the way on the right, and that is with that full 21 foot really zone between the sidewalk, the special pavers, and then the private open space that we've created along Pierce Street there. You can go to the next slide, Jess. Members of this committee also suggested astutely that we look into adding greenery elsewhere in the building, referencing how successful the Red Line project was next door. So we did both. We increased the size of the private open space, we removed the building elements from above it, and added a substantial amount of new plantings along the building face, amenity area, and rooftop. So these show views along Pierce Street where we greatly expanded the open space and removed the building elements from above it. Go to the next slide. Gonna pull it back to you. There we go. To accomplish this, we reconfigured the lobby entrance and pulled the building back. This approximately doubled the amount of private open space on Pierce Street. That was a big move. It's hard to see in the rendering, but there's a space further up the street on the other side of the parking entrance that we also widened. We did that by pushing electrical transformers farther back into the building area. This all came at a cost, and I've talked about how this project is economically challenged because it didn't work financially with the previous design. It still doesn't work financially with this design, which has cut back the leasable area in the unit count even further. But we still think this has a chance of seeing the light of day as far as being built. It's just that we need economic conditions to improve. That's the central tension with this, is we're trying to balance retaining every scrap of leasable area that we can so that we can actually build this building, deliver the housing, both market rate and affordable, and see this thing through without cutting it back so much that we create a project that'll just languish and never actually be financed or constructed. You can go to the next one. We added a lot more greenery to the facade too, in response to those same comments. There was also some concern in our last meeting about some of the Art Deco elements of the building not working well. That's something that HLRB really picked up on. The building's major design inspiration is the existing motel. They really like that. They appreciated that the masonry rolls responded to the scale. Those are those big white walls in the front, and the speed of Route 50 in the same way that the motel signed it. Go to the next slide. And switching between these two images, you can see what we've adjusted. We've removed a lot of the extraneous items that really conflicted with the inspiration from the motel, the flagpoles, the antenna, the medallions at the top, and the vertical fin. You can go to the next one. But staff did ask us, and this was covered in Peter's presentation as well, to stick with the area plan recommendation for either Art Deco or Colonial Revival. And so we have left the medallions along Fairfax Drive. We do think this provides some needed detail at the pedestrian level, while not detracting from the bolder moves higher up on the facade. On a related matter, you can go to the next two. We also found a way to preserve a portion of the existing 50 sign that came out of the HLRB meeting, which was a really cool idea. So we'll be removing a portion of it and placing it inside the lobby. And since the lobby has a large glass wall, which also echoes the wall of the existing hotel's lobby, it will be visible even to people driving by. We accomplished this at the same time that we're reconfiguring the lobby entrance to get more private open space. So it worked out fairly well in that sense, do these moves at the same time. Do the next slide. The next one is going to be a summary of the historical aspects of the existing motel that we preserved with our design. Just wanted to quickly remind folks of what those were and then where they are in the building. That's the 50 sign, so it's. All right, so here's the elements of the existing building that we incorporated. This is part of the presentation in HLRB, but we have 50 sign, the peach brick that is repeated in the design, the ornamental railings, the stone wall, which also is echoed by the front wall, but that's really more about the sign, the corner storefront lobby, and the glass there also mimics our hotel lobby. So you can go to the next slide. The next slide is going to show you where those elements show up on the inside of the design of the building. So there's where they all are. You can see the 50 sign being repeated in that front panel piece of the architecture, the peach brick, obviously the ornamental railings. We had a lengthy discussion about even preserving ornamental railings from the original design, but they wouldn't have been anywhere close to code. Could have been death traps. We did not do that. The corner storefront, of course. Okay, next slide. Third, there wasn't a question about whether we met Chesapeake Bay Preservation Ordinance requirements for tree canopy coverage. I told you all that we did, but there were questions on that. And we went back and we met several times with staff to go over it. We do meet it. In fact, we exceed it. And part of the changes that put us over the requirement were we added a street tree on Queen. We worked with urban forestry staff to adjust spacing. They'll adjust those minimum spacing requirements to get more trees sometimes. We put 2 trees in the new private open space along Pierce, and we enhanced the tree that is in the amenity area on the 4th floor as well. And there were other changes with the design of the building that helped reduce the impacts that some design features had on the tree canopy itself to further enable those trees to grow and thrive. So we can go to the next. We have some charts here that summarize all of this, and I won't go over them in detail because I want to preserve time to make it through this entire presentation. But suffice to say, we're at about 19% canopy coverage for the entirety of the site. We meet Chesapeake Bay canopy coverage, which is about 10%. Chesapeake Bay can only be satisfied with certain trees. They have to be on your site, not part of the site that you maintain and the county still retains ownership of. There's some other requirements with soil volume and spacing. So ultimately, and you're going to see this on the next 2 slides as the internet catches up with me, the trees that we're counting for Chesapeake Bay are the pink ones along Fairfax Drive. And then there we go. The pink ones along Fairfax Drive and the tree in the amenity area. And the ones that we can't count are the ones in green. But they still add to canopy coverage, and the owner is still obligated to maintain those trees for the life of the site plans. They're still trees. So our total canopy coverage, counting all of this, everything that we plant and have to maintain, is 19.33. That's on a data table that we have in here too, which might have been the previous slide. Just flash it real quick if it'll catch up with you. But either way, 19% is incredibly strong. I think that the highest canopy goal I've ever seen is in the Pentagon city sector plan, and that's 20%. And that is a struggle for developers to meet on far larger sites than this very small site. So to get to 20% canopy coverage, it's great. So this table goes through all the data. This was all thoroughly vetted with the forester. He was happy to reach consensus with us that we both met and exceeded Chesapeake Bay, and he also helped us with how to plant the trees in the private open space and how many to plant. I'll remind you too, we are going from 0 trees on site to almost 20 now. So this is a huge, huge change over existing conditions. I'm going to go all the way to 18 if you can, Jess. Fourth, this relates to canopy coverage in the private open space. There was a comment about increasing the amount of biophilic design. I've referenced this throughout. You can see that along Fairfax Drive, all of those plantings sort of falling over the front of the building there. Those are in part due to new planters. We have a planter along the 4th floor terrace that we'll discuss a little bit more in the landscape portion. But if you go to the next 2 slides, the next one's going to be showing you what we used to have. So you can see the real striking difference in especially the building, but also Pierce exit areas. So this is the previous design. This is what Peter was showing, but you can see a stark difference in the amount of plantings, the open space not being there, and the amount of biophilia. Go to the next one. I think the next one just shows you where that planter is. It emphasizes that it's hard to read from here, but that's 162 square feet on that planter. To make that change, we also had to make adjustments to the building. We had to push back on some units. We had to sacrifice more leasable area. Everything we've done here to introduce more greenery, to introduce the ground level planted area, all of that reduces obviously the square footage of the building, the amount of space that we can provide for tenants, and then therefore the mechanism by which we finance this and get this thing actually built. But we cut in, I think, strategically to provide the best possible benefit while still giving the project a chance to be built. So to summarize, what did we do from last time that we changed? Private open space dramatically improved, toning down some of the Art Deco elements, but retaining them, making sure that we met Chesapeake Bay, which we do. In fact, we exceed it by really twice the requirement, and adding biophilic design elements, which you can see throughout the building. So moving forward to the topics for today, I'm going to briefly address sustainability, but Kathy Lawson is here to answer questions. And I anticipate that most of the discussion of sustainability will be in response to questions. We are participating in the 0.25 FAR tier for the county's green building incentive program. This slide that we're about to put up here, as soon as the computer catches up with us, summarizes the commitments. I think that you all are fairly familiar with them at this point, but it is LEED Gold, there's energy optimization, and then there's various levels of optionality in here. We are committed to satisfying the 0.25 FAR tier requirements, and happy to discuss any other specifics about the project that y'all are interested in during discussion. With that, I think I can pitch it over to David, who is going to go over a little bit about some of these planted areas in more detail. And then Mike Warkowski is going to briefly talk about transportation, and then, time permitting, I'll wrap up with community benefits and construction. Go ahead, David.
Hey, great. Thanks, Nick. Hey, this is David Judd with Studio 39. First wanted to start off, for such a small site, I think we've created a lot of landscape opportunities on multiple building levels. And also one thing that'll be kind of reoccurring on all of the different levels is we're trying to strive to maintain or plant native plant materials and pollinators such as milkweed as much as we can, just to kind of help kind of go along the lines with what the county is requiring for pollinators and things like that, and native plantings. This is the overall site. I'll walk through, this is showing all the different levels from the ground plane all the way up to the green roof. But let me start you walking you through the different levels. If you could change the slide for the ground level. And I guess I'll say, as Nick's mentioned, on the extensive ground open space that we've got provided along Pierce Street, we see this as including the streetscape planted with the native pollinators, and there'll also be the 2 ornamental trees in front of the building in this space. We've shown these areas as planters, but the idea, as you can see from the previous renderings, is we have a lot of grade change we've got to compensate along Pierce Street. So we're trying to keep the planting, the ground plane as low as we possibly can. One thing also, we kind of wrapping around, if you could go to the ground plane slide, the 24 slide. I don't know if Jess can do that.
You're losing the Wi-Fi connection. That's really been, I think, the issue the whole time is the internet.
Oh, okay. Well, but yeah, I mean, okay, great. Thank you. So just to kind of continue on this, we do have lower planters and kind of stepping down, going with the grade of North Pierce right there. But one thing we've also kind of doing is adding a bench right here on the corner, right adjacent to the planter, adjacent to the entry. We're using or having included this for people waiting for ride shares and the like. We'll also note that while the emphasis is on the private space on Pierce, we also have to turn the corner around onto Fairfax. And one thing to kind of help with the try to create a cohesive element right here is we've included a specialty paving. It kind of goes through the main entry and into the building as seen on previous slides. And we're kind of blending the seamlessly inside or the outside into the inside. You go to the next slide. The next level we're going to look at is the second level, where we have the bioplanter in the back of the building, which will have ornamental trees and native plantings, and that this fronts out onto terraces from the units there. One thing not shown on this plan, but Nick just mentioned a few moments ago, is we will have some planters on the second floor facing Fairfax, which helps us with the green effect along the facade of the building as well. Can you change the slide, please? And on the fourth floor, there is a large public terrace, like Nick mentioned, which will connect to an interior lounge. This will be a functional area with seating and a grilling area, but also have a fair amount of landscaping, including the canopy tree Nick mentioned, and other plantings, native plantings and perennials and things like that. We do, well, once the image comes back up, hopefully the internet will get faster. But we, to bring attention to one feature is that planter that's along the edge that was shown in the previous architectural renderings, where we do have plants that will be hanging over the edge, which brings us around to the next slide.
Yeah,
That one.
We would like.
right
Yeah.
there.
I should talk slower.
I'll speak to the manager about his conference room. I mean, it's gonna be any easier for you.
Yeah, if you can, send it to me somehow.
I think we did.
How many more slides do you have? Like this? Three. Okay. Well, that's fine. Let's just suffer through the last three because we should wrap this up for the discussion.
Yeah, I agree. And my slides for the end of it are not important. I just wanted to show these landscape slides because we spent some time on these. Like
And we're not
some of them.
suffering at all to look at these slides.
Right.
So that's the amenity area, and the next one, slowly I turned. But while we're looking at this, you can kind of see where how the planting area is adjacent along the edge of the parapet, where we'll have the plantings and the plantings kind of cascading over the edge of the building. One thing, it takes me to the segue for the next slide, which will pop up in a second, is we were asked to look at the Red Line project across the street across from Pierce Street. Yeah, right there. And this is kind of the elements we kind of picked up from that project, as you can see in the images from the Red Line stuff. We think this will create an interesting uniformity along Fairfax Drive, but it also creates a nice continuity as people are driving along Arlington Boulevard to see the greenery spilling off the terraces on both projects, the Red Line as well as ours. And as an aside as well, to kind of create the continuity along Fairfax, we think it would be great if Red Line is not the only development by itself on the bottom of the hill. If you can go to the next slide. And basically the last slide will be our green roof. It's not a public space up there, and we're limited to what we can do because of the structural type. Yeah, there it is. The structure type of the building, but we will have a green roof. The green roof is on the side of the building or on the side of the roof, being looking down from Union on Queen Street. And again, structurally, we're trying to see if we could possibly get some areas where we can get a little bit more depth of soil, but we are limited to structural requirements, what we can do to try to get some more maybe pollinators and a little bit taller perennials up there on the top. And that's it for the landscape.
Honestly, the next two slides are transportation. Mr. Mike Wachowski's here
They
to
are.
speak to them. I do know.
Page now, that way I'll be.
Well,
done
yeah,
by the time.
there you go. It just came up. And I was gonna say that what you're covering is fairly similar to surgery. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's hi everyone, I'm Mike Warkowski. We did do a MMTA transportation assessment. What you heard from Sergio are a lot of key things. Some of the important ones are we do have, clear frontages on all the frontages. You have the upgraded pathway that'll be along Fairfax Drive. We don't really have much real vehicle impact. This isn't a super dense project. 145 units is, compared to many others, is about half of what a lot of them are. But when you compare that to what the previous hotel had, the differential is very low. It's like 10 peak hour trips. So in vehicle terms, you really have minor impacts there. We also, are not providing tons of parking, so we're at a 0.4 FAR. So we do have, we will have a transportation management plan, which also, helps reduce trips. And the need to own a vehicle. So those kinds of elements are what really reduce the traffic impacts. We did look at some of the intersections that you can see here around the site, but if people have questions.
We're also at if you count the compact spaces in the garage, we're at about a 0.6. So we've used every single square foot of that garage we possibly can without digging a second level space. And so we provided as much parking as we can. The number of compact spaces we have just led to the county saying, well, we'll legally require, the number of spaces we can with a normal-ish compact parking ratio. And then all the extra spaces that you want to provide that are also compact, that's up to you to manage. We're not going to say they're legally required. That's eventually how we worked it out. But we have a number of compact parking spaces as well to supplement that 0.4 parking ratio. But again, it's just we're doing the best we can with one level. Next couple slides are community benefits and then construction. For community benefits, it's essentially what Peter said. I mean, I identified the base density contributions, the other sorts of things that any site plan would do. I mean, we're going to do the base affordable housing contribution, obviously. We're going to on-site units that can earn that tier of density between a 1.65 and a 3.24 FAR. That's all under the area plan to earn that extra bit of density with affordable housing. Then we have density beyond a 3.24 FAR up to about a 5.5 or so. That would be earned with the Green Building Incentive Program at the 0.25 FAR level. And then we've been open to saying, hey, we'll do more on-site affordable units to earn additional bonus density here. We think that makes sense. We have on-site units already that we would need to manage. So adding more makes perfect sense to us. The other things, like I said, on there, public art, TDM that Mike just talked about, those are standard contributions. Really, we'll truly be earning density here are on-site units, most likely, and 0.25 FAR tier. The final slide is about construction. And, it's early in this process. And the project, like I've said many times, is on precarious financial, like everything is these days, very difficult to build in our county from a financing perspective, given the enormous cost. But the construction of this building would proceed a lot like Red Line next door. They're actually under construction. They got a project that they were able to build, which is really fantastic. It's much bigger than ours, but from an access, from a impacts perspective, it's going to look a lot like that because this is also going to be a wood frame over concrete podium building. I identified a number of conditions in here. If we had more members of the community that weren't as experienced as Leslie and Stu, I would go through them. But you guys know that there's a lot of stuff in here that we approve with the county administratively following approval, hauling routes, MOT, et cetera, et cetera. The construction hours are standard. We're not going to adjust those. I don't think any project has in many, many years. And there will, of course, be a community meeting that we would have to explain all of those different documents prior to engaging even in demolition or land disturbance on site. And that would, of course, include your local civic association. So with that, that is our presentation.
All right, we're ready to get into the discussion. You mentioned the remaining topics we have: parking and transportation, green building and sustainability, and site features and amenities known as community benefits. So any questions or observations about parking and transportation?
Yeah.
See, Joe Ventrone has his hand
Yeah.
raised.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. First of all, on the affordable, you should be commended for doing 14 affordable units. I believe those are those going to be capped?
The exact number we'll figure out, Joe, but they would be 60% AMI for 30 years, which is the county's requirement for any dedication. When we say 14, we're estimating all one bedrooms. I guarantee you housing will want a mix of types, and that would then reduce the number, but it would be a square footage and value negotiation just to ensure that we got them.
Well, you're to be commended for at least doing a good number. My main, and I've walked the site many times, and I like the way you're going to fit it in with the Red Lion. The biggest concern I have, and this is the experience we're finding in Rosslyn, I'm also president of the North Rosslyn Civic Association. The biggest problem we have is with a lot of the new buildings being built, there's no bump outs for Amazon delivery, Uber rides, or whatever. And now that the lobby is at that corner of the intersection, it seems a shame that you couldn't have some type of a bump out for a car, because those are 2-lane streets, and you may have some problems there. Was there any consideration for a bump out?
Understood. Those sorts of features, I'll start off with, it's very, very, very challenging on this site to do anything like that because we'd be giving up a substantial amount of actual livable area to create more of a auto entrance or turnoff.
Yeah.
The second is that staff typically will not support or allow things like that because they are considered a suburban design feature that is auto-centric, and we are asked to use street parking for pickup and drop-off activity.
Yeah, I'll just add that North Pierce Street does have some on-street parking just north of the site. And that will be available for pretty much any type of use.
And Joe, what we would do is during permitting and construction, we can put in a request to DES for those spaces to be signed for short-term parking, which could be as little as I think 10 minutes, something like that. But for a duration that would hopefully keep them free for visitor and delivery type use.
Right. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Yep.
Let's, Mr. Goodman, we'll do you after we go around the table first. Let's go around the table.
And these are questions and comments specific to transportation.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm interested in, you mentioned that there would be 3 short-term bike parking units outside of, like on the sidewalk, or is that inside the garage?
So we should have both protected parking for bicycles inside the garage that is for tenants. And then visitor parking is typically in racks closer to the building entrance. That should be a distinction. Is that correct, guys?
So it was, the comment was made that there would be 3 short-term spots. So is that like one
I think that's one rack. I mean, do we have more than one rack?
We have 2 racks.
Okay.
So
2
We have
racks?
2 racks.
So we have 4 spots for visitor bikes.
Okay,
I'll add that they're located on Pierce Street, so like in front of the lobby. That's what we've been seeing.
okay. I mean, if there's space to add a little bit more, I think that's helpful, especially if this is gonna be right along the Arlington Boulevard Trail. You might get people that are, coming and visiting and pop in and see their friends really quickly.
Definitely.
Also, I was interested, you mentioned that the bike score is gonna be 62. Is that the current conditions, or if we do all of these improvements to the Arlington Boulevard Trail, is the future? Okay, so
Yeah,
if we do improvements, then theoretically the bike score goes up. Is that right?
Yeah.
Goes wrong.
Quick one. Is that funded in the CIP still? The improvement along Arlington Boulevard? Are we safe to assume that's going to happen?
Yeah, I have a backup slide.
Nothing's
on
safe
that
anymore?
information. It's currently in design, so no construction has started, but maybe we can bring that up.
Let me see if I can.
I want to say that the information on funding is on the website, but as I said, like it hasn't started construction. And the engineers right now are going through the designs right now.
Is it like gonna be funded by county dollars, or do we rely a lot on federal funds?
This is a county project.
Okay,
so, yeah.
100% county, okay.
Anybody else on the table here?
Mike mentioned the transportation demand management plan. What are the 2 or 3 top pieces of that plan?
They're all the standard requirements, but Mike, if you could recite
yeah.
it.
I mean, there are basically incentives. At first, it's like information and promoting the various, transit options so that people know that they have options, how they get the information, having a program manager for the building that runs it, and then incentives for, smart trip cards, those sorts of things to get people to try transit and to understand that they can use it and get used to it. Those are sort of the key elements of the plan.
Yeah, new people lease, this is a standard condition for quite some time. New people leasing up are given a preloaded smart trip card, although now you can pay by credit card. Well, I guess we'll still do the smart trip card, or have a choice of a complimentary month of bike share membership, a couple months. car share membership. And the on coordinator is intended to provide information to the county. The county then does, they also have to agree to fund studies. They pay us, don't they, to do studies of transit usage and bicycle usage. And so it's a combination of incentives, but also things on site that encourage people to use transit.
We obviously expect tenants who are going to be using transit here due to the parking ratio, the location of the building, as part of the sort of thesis of this.
Parking, for instance, is unbundled from the price of rent, for instance.
Separate.
Yes.
And you've mentioned compact cars, and your ratio of compact to traditional is higher?
Yeah, so, well, it's not that we have more compact than we have traditional. I think it's that we have something like, if you count every single space in there, I want to say it's like 40%. It's high. But typically the county sees about 15% compact, and that gets adjusted sometimes. But for the legal parking ratio, we set it at 0.4, which includes 15% compact, and then everything surplus above that is just more compact spaces.
So I have a question about that, because you're talking about 0.4 legally, but when you look at red line, 0.57, Xerox building potentially 0.56, even Wakefield Minor 0.48, all higher. So, and
our actual parking supply is higher than theirs, but yeah, a lot of it's compact.
Traditionally, our civic association has thought that parking is too low parking ratio. That hasn't changed on this project.
I understand. We are obviously looking to lease to people who are less reliant on a vehicle. And tenants of this building also legally are not allowed to get a residential permit parking pass to park on the street. That being said, there are often situations where street parking is freely available and some people choose to use that. I don't know that there's a neighborhood close enough by that relies, like a single family owned neighborhood that relies on its street parking to supplement off-street parking in driveways and garages. That's often in tension, but the county also gets to choose how it regulates its streets. Quite frankly, for us.
A real number, like a total number of cars, that we excluded all those over 15% of compact, will be 0.58.
Yeah, this might be a little difficult to convey, but there's an official parking count because generally staff does not support a compact parking ratio over 15%. We prefer to see 85% full-size parking spaces. However, in many spaces, we have seen the applicant provides parking spaces above and beyond that don't meet necessarily our 15% compact parking standard. And we just allow them to have those extra spaces, and it's basically a paper exercise. So there's like an actual number of parking spaces you'll see on site, and then an official parking count.
Zoning commissioners are not going to come in and wrap you over.
Yeah, exactly. So we, yeah, exactly. So yeah, we can keep to our 15%. Yeah, that's the thing. The residential parking study. Sergio, I don't know, remember it can become less parking than this, I think.
I guarantee you we might qualify for 3 or something.
Offhand, yeah.
I mean, the county's been on a car diet for a decade.
I realize that.
I know. It's a generation shift.
No, that's just different philosophy.
And developers have different philosophies too, right? I mean, we've seen some places that
like
parking.
The 2500 Wilson Boulevard, he upped it.
Yeah, some people want more because they think the lease better. But again, it's also part of it is like, what's your target market too? I can lease to people who don't have vehicles, and there's enough people to lease the units in my building to them. And then others who want parking will go to buildings that have parking, especially some of the older ones that are still.
We should keep it. Yeah. Eric Goodman online, you have your hand is up.
Yes, hi. My concern is really with regard to Queen Street. We're talking about a very narrow sidewalk there, and also it's very, very, very steep. So that combination isn't good. And planting trees, I think it's especially of concern that the type of tree that you plant is not going to overgrow its area and cause sidewalk heaves and other things like that. So my concern is 5 feet is already about the narrowest you ever want to go. And for such a steep street, I'm just worried that over time we may end up with a sort of treacherous sidewalk on Queen Street.
We are responsible for maintaining the sidewalk, and we do shy away from the little bricks and other things in the past that were disturbed more easily by tree roots. But that's certainly something we'll keep an eye on and would be responsible for preventing or fixing if it happens.
Is there anybody else on the table who wants to speak about this?
What kind of trees can we talk?
Tyler, if anyone wants to speak, I know that we alternated species. I think we have willow oaks and some others. Go ahead, Tyler.
Queen Street is 2 sugar hackberries and 3 black gum. So it's a medium and a medium large size trees.
We previously had a tree species that people did not care for.
We had Hightower willow before, and it was discussed that you do not really care for varieties. So we've moved it to a scarlet oak or red oak. One of the two. That's what it goes. Yeah, we removed the ginkgos that were on Pearson and Queen. Got neighbors.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Schreiner.
Yeah, so I forget who mentioned a legal comment earlier, but I don't know, this isn't a question per se, but this is. I see the concern, it's given what I've seen in a lot of these. Hello? Okay. You should be okay. I want to hear myself twice. That's not fun. But anyway, I've seen a lot of these apartment buildings, a lot of times you'll have these cars just, somebody's just picking somebody up, dropping something off. So I think that there is a concern for that. I don't know what I would suggest, but I just think there might be an issue of these cars just parking out front, even if there are not actually any parking.
Relying on urban solutions like street parking for pickup and drop-off does lead to an urban condition that often looks like it is part of the trade-off.
So wait, is there street parking that we can work with? 'Cause
There
the
is,
picture, yeah, okay, the picture doesn't show it, but there will be.
Oh, there will be, okay.
And the county DES will decide what's short term and
Yeah.
what's 2 hours.
So on Fairfax Drive, that would be
No, there's no parking on Fairfax Drive.
I just felt that.
The
Mention
streets,
that. It's gonna be, to the extent there is any there now, I guarantee you that's being filled by the expansion of the bike lane, right? The path.
yes. I mean, I don't even think there's none located on Fairfax Drive today in
Okay.
front of the site. But I was saying earlier that on Pierce Street, north of the site, there is some on-street parking there. That's just your typical on-street paid parking. Which the applicant can request, that DES look at reserving some of those spaces for either pickup and drop off or some type of operation like that, short term.
Oh, but it's like a block up the street. It wouldn't be right in front of the property.
Yeah, that's my concern, because people will see the entrance, and be like, that's where I'm supposed to go. Just leave their vehicle right there.
I mean, people will occasionally be stopping, like in a lot of parts in Arlington, you see it where folks stop, they might put down the hazards or something, hopefully it's quick, but
Right.
again, that is part of your condition to some extent.
Yeah, I guess the pros and cons, because right now
Exactly.
the streetscape along all the frontages of this site are very, very poor, like maybe like 4 foot wide sidewalks.
Oh,
So
yeah.
trying to prioritize widening that streetscape and enhancing it to meet at least MTP or what was it, the Fort Myers Heights plan? But still, yeah, I mean, on-street parking pretty much takes away from
Exactly.
enhanced streetscape.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, then obviously, if we didn't have the trail on Fairfax as well, that could be a lot of street parking, but instead it's gonna be a line bike path. Yeah, I would do.
Other questions about parking and transportation? All right, we'll move on to green building and sustainability.
So, well, first of all, I really love the biophilic elements that have entered this, especially the cascading planters off the edge there, on face of Fairfax, I think that looks really, really good. My question is for staff on the open space issue. I remember early on in the slideshow that you all had, part of the initial plan way back when was that there would be a public, private, open space, green space, landscape and all that. And in the way that this is currently drawn up, do you feel like this meets the spirit of that?
That the staff's opinion is that it does not. Just to be clear, it is intended to be a private space only. It wasn't one of the public spaces, but it's still, we do not find it to be within the spirit of the plan of reflecting sort of open lawns of the garden apartment aesthetic. While a specific size, there isn't a specific size targeted, not even a specific configuration. Staff have discussed this amongst ourselves, and we still do not believe it meets the spirit of the plan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was kind of thinking the same thing. I know it's the geography of this, the geometry of this is really difficult. But yeah, I was thinking the same thing regarding green space there.
Any others?
Anything else?
I don't know if this is the section. When can we talk about that fourth floor terrace?
The what?
The fourth floor terrace.
Yeah, this one. This is, biophilia, landscaping.
I thought we have a proper rendering of the tree on that. That was asked for.
We corrected the appearance of the tree and all the things. And the chart that actually, shows expected tree canopy, et cetera, is accurate. So that data is in the slideshow. But yeah, we rectified that because we also discussed the tree, its soil volume, its lightness, et cetera.
This looks like this on the rendering though.
Well, I think we expanded that planter too. So we actually gave that in this turn of revisions, we've given that tree more space to live and grow.
You sure it's not going to bump into any of the windows up there?
If it grows that well, I'll be happy.
We have that problem where I am.
That'll be a maintenance question for the operations team at the building.
It won't grow that wide.
Italy.
Are you staff counting the green roof into the private green space?
No, it has to be ground level. That is one thing that because obviously the garden apartment aesthetic is that it's ground level space with the low lot coverage. We understand that's difficult perhaps on this site, but that's why the extra height is permitted on the site too. So it has to be ground level for it to count, even if it's albeit private.
I mean, I do think since the plan specifically calls for it, it's a very hard thing for the planning commission to say, like, ignore that part of the plan. Though, I mean, I appreciate what else you've done with the green roof and the plants hanging over the terraces. It looked like in the picture, there was plants hanging over multiple levels, but then I think, are there planters on all of those levels? Okay. And would that be a year-round condition or mostly like spring to fall and then in the winter they die?
Yeah.
Are they gonna have enough time to regrow every year?
That's for the landscaping team. I mean, I think that they need to be maintained and potentially replanted some, but I mean, have we thought about exactly what will go in there and the maintenance?
There's not been an immediate thought. I don't know if David, if you really want to take control of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think on this one, what we're looking at is evergreen. So it's evergreen year round, hopefully maintenance free. Well, there's no landscape that's maintenance free, but thinking like trumpet vine and things like that, something that's gonna be evergreen and cascading over, and also flowering.
Okay, and this should be a site plan condition, and if they wanted to change it because at a future point they decided it weighs too much to have that much dirt, would that be a major or a minor?
That's a good question. I can't answer that.
Be a minor, because it wouldn't be administrative.
It would be
Change
too,
like
it would
that
be too much to be administrative. Yeah, it probably wouldn't meet the definition of a major.
It would not, it would be fine. But it would need to go to, because that is a departure from what we showed, except that's enough that
Does a minor go to the board?
Yes, it does, but not to the
Okay,
planning
not to the
commission.
planning commission. Okay.
I will say this about the private open space. I mean, Ms. Peterson, you mentioned, it's something that the planning commission can't just, set aside. We do have it. It's a question, in my view, at this point, in a debate with staff over whether or not it meets the guidance, which is the two sentences that we're relying on here, which is one sentence that says private open spaces throughout the entire plan area should echo the garden department aesthetic. And the other sentence that says there should be a private landscapes open space on site. I think that we're at this point arguing whether or not it echoes the garden department aesthetic, which I think it does, or whether it's substantial. And I can certainly tell you that what we've done has been a very substantial move for us. It is a substantial impact on the building. And beyond that, we're dealing with a very subjective guidance here, right? It's not clear. And there's nothing else in the plan to tell us what this space should look like, other than exactly what Peter mentioned.
Well, it does say open lawns, trees, shade trees, that sort of thing. So
we have 2 shade trees.
So did you present to HALRB?
Yes.
Okay, and can you remind, I feel like you said in the presentation, I don't remember, what was their feedback?
Oh, I didn't attend HLRB. Lauren, if there is she could.
Yeah, no, during the last meeting with the HLRB, we showed a previous iteration. You guys had made a couple edits before that. And we had acknowledged the challenges of going from kind of the prescriptive area plan and kind of the general guidelines of the HLRB. What we wanted to see, especially in conservation, preservation. We liked that you guys had looked at salvaging the sign, and here it looks like you have more of a commitment to actually salvaging the existing sign. We did appreciate kind of the gesture and the inspiration with those floating panels. And there was a brief discussion, like you mentioned, about the railings. We wanted to deviate or suggested deviating a little bit from the area plan in that the Art Deco and colonial revival isn't as important contextually. However, there was a lot of discussion about the green space. And because that is a part of the area plan, but it's also part of the kind of aesthetic and contextual, stylistic, it's appropriate for this area. And we didn't see it, and we haven't really seen a gesture towards it. We see that there's a little bit of, especially with these sort of biophilic moments, that does kind of evoke a little bit more of a connection to the green space for a garden apartment, but there isn't any rolling lawn. There isn't anything that you'd see in a garden apartment. And so that we had a sticking point.
And to be clear too, a rolling lawn, I don't think is possible to achieve with the size of the site and just the realities of trying to build a building that could then, actually see the light of day, right?
Because concrete isn't.
Oh, yeah, I mean, that's part of it, is that steel and concrete is enormously expensive, and to build a 12-story building here next to an open lawn, which I don't think is a garden apartment at all, really, personally, I don't think aesthetically that makes any sense either. But that would not be financially feasible here. It's just not, we're not gonna be able to do that. I don't think anybody's ever gonna be able to do that, quite frankly. I just don't think the plan really thought that through, which happens, it's a 20-year-old plan. So that's something I want to be clear about too. But really I want to emphasize as well, like staff has made the point that we could, in theory, build a 12-story building that could, in theory, open up space for what they're calling a rolling lawn. I just don't see how that is a garden apartment in any way, shape, or form to put a 12-story tower next to grass. I don't think that looks like a garden apartment personally. That being said, it's just not in the cards either way. It's just not realistic. So
That being said, also ground level access to green space is important. I see what you've done here, especially with this new iteration to kind of pull it back and maybe suggest it, but that's not even a facsimile of it. It's a little bit more landscaping. That's not access to green space.
What about like things in Bennett Park? You have an open space on the ground floor there, indoors.
Indoor?
That wouldn't count from a plan perspective. No. Having been in Bennett Park, it's also unheated. And that was probably successful.
Also, we did have ground level open space along Fairfax Drive, and we're asked to remove that because the desire was for a continuous street front.
The plan does call for, street frontage on Fairfax.
So the only place to cut in is on the sides of the building. And so that's what we've done. I mean, there's access to it in the sense that it's directly outside of the entrance. We could certainly put a bench or two in there. People can sit there, and we think that with the, the unique paver treatment of that entire corner, it makes it a little bit more vibrant, a little bit more usable. I understand that it's not 30, 40, 50 feet deep, and it's not half of this little site. I just don't think that was ever realistic. I think that cartoon in the plan is a little unfortunate because it depicts something that's just wildly feasible.
Any other comments around the table? Caroline Haynes, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the, let me get my camera on. I appreciate the changes that the applicant has made in this, and specifically with respect to the spaces. Yeah, we would like to see more than that. Obviously, all of us would, but I get it. And also the dense planting of native plants, I think we would perceive as a positive kind of thing. So we really do hope that that comes to fruition. One thing I would note too, just on the garden apartment concept, I would note that there was a lot of discussion under the Barcroft renovation too of increasing the plantings and getting rid of some of the lawn. So, ecologically, it's a much better thing to have lots of variety of plants, of native plants, than it is a lawn. So just from that perspective, it may not be the worst thing. And it really does soften that edge of the building. I did just have a question about the maintenance of the cascading plants off of those planters. Will those be the building owner? That's not, because those are some apartments there as well. And just want to make sure that the maintenance is kind of holistic.
Yeah, I mean, Josh can confirm that the building would be responsible for ensuring under the site plan that all of those publicly facing features are maintained. There might be some requirement for tenants to allow building ops to do some maintenance, but go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, that's right. I know those would have to be irrigated as well to maintain the plants.
Okay, great, thank you. And I did just want to commend you all too for bringing back that building. And it was nuts to think that we were going to have canopy trees with an overhang. So I appreciate the movement on that as well. Thank you.
Other questions about green building and sustainability? All right, we'll move on to site features in a minute.
I'm sorry. Was that
Go ahead.
my cue?
Sure.
So we haven't really talked much about sustainability. So it's back on water heating and cooking, all electric.
Kathy, can you hear us? I think you can handle this back and forth.
I lost the audio there for a second. Could you repeat the question?
Oh, go ahead.
Sure, just start at the top with the basic things. HVAC, hot water heating and cooking, all electric in this proposed building?
Yes, that is the plan.
And then if the electricity goes down, is there going to be a backup diesel generator or perhaps a battery backup?
Generator is the current plan. We're still working through all of the details with the mechanical, the MEP design. But diesel generator is typically what we would do here.
Right. And then we talked about parking, and I understand there's a lot of constraints on parking. I didn't hear anything about EV charging or EV ready for any of these parking spaces. Could you comment on that?
Yes, we do. We will have both 4% EV charging stations and 15% EV ready per the GBIP.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Could you talk about bird-friendly material?
We are planning to have a fritted glass between 8 feet and 36 feet above grade to deter birds from obviously approaching the glass. It'll meet the requirements of LEED and threat factor of 30 or better.
Light pollution reduction.
Yes, light pollution reduction. We will have 90% of our exterior fixtures are going to have motion sensor controls or integrated PV cells or photosensors or time clock operation. We're also going to look at shielding any light fixtures so they're not creating the upward light pollution. And we will look for dark sky approved fixtures, though they won't all be dark sky, though they'll meet the requirements.
The sustainability here talks about equity policy for development team. Can you speak on that very briefly?
Yeah, we are still working through that item, and we may need a little guidance from the county on what you're looking for exactly there, but the development team has committed to providing information on their DEI programs and making any changes that need to be made to accommodate that item.
Thank you. One moment. Yeah. So I was looking online for the answers to some of these questions I've just asked, and I just, and it's probably because I don't know where to look, but are there documents that show these plans, or are these all sort of spoken at the moment?
We have submitted a narrative that describes how we're going to meet each of these requirements. It's all based on the Green Building Improvement or Incentive Program.
So the narrative is all based on the GBIP section. Okay.
Correct.
All right, I'll look for that. Thank you very much.
Sure.
That's it, Doug?
Thank you.
Okay. Any last questions about sustainability or green building? All right, then we'll move on to community benefits. Be quick, Henley.
I'll just say, you mentioned most likely on-site CAFs or definitely on-site CAFs, but the number is.
Yeah, so we know that we're doing on-site units to earn that middle tier of density under the area plan. And that, I think the math was, say 5-ish units, maybe 6+ or something like that, but it's going to depend on the mix of the units. We had a square footage figure in there that I think was between 6,000 and 7,000 square feet. And then everything beyond a 3.24, which is the base density, we would earn. And we're very open to doing that with more on-site units. And I honestly think that'll be the solution. We just haven't had the discussion yet.
Okay.
So it just depends on the numbers.
I certainly think that if it comes to planning commission, we will very much appreciate seeing the on-site units. And that always helps when there's the other kind of challenging elements of the project to kind of say, we want housing, we want on-site units, we want family-sized units. You know, Commissioner Steiner and I love seeing 3 bedrooms so that kids can have an affordable place to live too when their parents get one of the spots. So
we can, believe me, there are board members with similar priorities too. And so, we'll take that into account. It's a really tough project. What I'm asking you guys most chiefly is to not let the enemy of the good, because a lot of these things just don't actually happen if we can't get approved at least. And so we have very good intentions here. I think we've got a design that has creative space. So it's not that we're, previously, I think arguably staff was saying, but they had a point that, well, you're doing 5 to 8 feet, it's planters, there's building in the way. That's really not even providing this. I think we're at a point now where we have dug into where we can provide something that I think, complies with the spirit of the plan, but it's a debate over whether it does or it does not. Certainly when it comes down to how it's planted, how it's programmed, that will open book with you guys on. The doubling its size or something, I think is just something that, look, could I do that? We can put the plan together, we can all vote on it, and give us a lot of congratulations, yes. And then 3 or 4 years from now, it would be built, and then we'd be looking at extending it, and I would be strategizing about how we're going to change it to get it buildable. And we've got a lot of projects in Arlington like that. So, for over a decade, I think, Gateway Rosslyn is an example where that had an approval that just couldn't be constructed, and now they're back. Another trouble. We don't want to do that. That's not how I do anything. And that's, not going to help Josh. It's not going to help anyone. So, again.
I also think that when you talk about this, in theory, right? I think if we got into this in practice, it would be different from what people thought it was in theory, right? Because we still have to have parking access. So part of that frontage on Beer Street has to be taken up by a parking ramp, right? And because of the nature of the site, we have to start going down almost immediately, right? There's no space to not go down immediately. And then we also have the transformers, right? And they got to go somewhere on the site, and that place, that side of the site is where the line is running, so it makes sense for them to go there. But that's also going to eat into the character of the space that's there.
And the same is true on the other side of the building. It's the same exactly, even if we flipped it, which we looked at a while ago, we looked at a number of things with this for the site design and arrangement.
Yes, I mean, obviously it's been a back and forth. I mean, at one point in time, we had the parking and the loading over on Queen Street.
Yep.
And it was suggested that we separate those. So now one's on either side, which I think was a good suggestion.
It is better.
But I mean, these are all the sorts of things that we're trying to solve on what is a half-acre site, basically. And the half-acre, by the way, includes a portion of Fairfax Drive that is, that will really serve as public space. So, I mean, we're talking about, the size of a lot out in Prince William County that we're trying to put a building on.
And provide something that will satisfy staff. And we're still not entirely sure, other than something maybe bigger that they're looking for, because we're talking about subjective design recommendations for a private space. It's tough, but I really do love the design that we showed you all tonight. And I really think that building next to the Red Line project, the two of them together, deliver a lot of housing, deliver a lot of affordable housing, some handsome looking buildings with biophilic design for a nice little corridor right there along 50 on Fairfax Drive. So there's a lot to love here.
Other questions?
Will there be an educational sign component? I know that we can't preserve all of the buildings.
We can do that.
Yeah.
We weren't sure if anybody still wanted it. After HLRB, I think a lot of folks are saying they don't like it because they don't like the idea that we just do that, right? And then we talked about everything else. But we're happy to do it. And so Lauren can put that in as a condition, and we could put a sign wherever, and it could be the same type of like recreation of the 50 sign. It can be whatever people think it should be.
Yeah, I echo that we can definitely do it. And when we were talking with HLRB, at the time, we didn't think we could actually preserve any portion of the sign itself. So as we're reconfiguring a lot of things, we now found the space to do that, but we're happy to do both.
So we have confirmation that that sign is the existing sign.
Yes.
That's the idea.
Right,
The,
cool.
the only asterisk I would put on it is we still have to get it off the existing building, so it's.
There's always, I mean, the condition will be written such that like, Lauren's on the line, but she's drafted conditions like this in the past with us. But there would be some sort of carve out where like, look, if it's destroyed during our attempt to preserve and cut it, then yes, we could do a replica or something. But the first attempt is gonna be to preserve.
And then checking on that as well, I like the storefront on that corner, but will there be a lighting plan or something else?
There will be, but the sign special. And the glass is gonna be totally transparent.
Definitely like to see that educational sign on the inside and outside, the public and people.
Please, yes.
Commissioner Peters.
Follow-up question about the sign. I know when we looked at the ARVA project, they did an analysis during the SPRC process that said, we are not going to be able to save this sign for sure. So have you all done that? And at this point, they're saying like, yeah, we think there's a pretty good chance, or no analysis has been done at this point?
I know that we've looked at the sign as far as like its structural quality, because we've been talking about this for years, but what would you say your level of confidence is right now in the savability of it?
I mean, we've looked at it many times. Have we had a official study done? No, we have not had an official study.
And is there a reason why when we did the ARVA project, like somebody actually did a study for that?
Yes, we made them do a study, and the reason for that was because it was specifically called out in the special club study that the sign should be preserved in some way. Here, we have the adopted area plan, which doesn't address the historic nature. In fact, does not put this on its historic list. And then we have the HRI, which is a separate, but it's not contextually tied to this site. So in this case, we don't have the specific guidance that the sign must be preserved in some way.
This was yet another instance of conflicting plan guidance because the HRI was developed so much later. And then there's a number of area plans and sector plans. We did it with Clarendon. If you remember, Joyce Motors was not on any sort of preservation within the sector plan, but was on the HRI. So just different opinions, 20 years apart.
Yeah.
Commissioner Stein.
And I have a comment on this historical preservation business. I think this latest version does a really good job of capturing that sort of retro aesthetic, glass lobby. The colors are very vibrant, which, as many of you know, I love talking about the colors of buildings. And I think that the actual retaining of the original sign is a really nice touch. It's a very clear, this whole thing is a very clear throwback reference to what is here now. Where other times, we'll see plans. Okay, it's stretched, but I see where you're going with that. But this is very clearly referencing the original building with materials, colors, the actual sign itself, the aesthetic. It looks good.
We've been trying for a while to find a place to put it, a way to use it. I'm glad that we found one.
Yeah.
Lauren Ferris. Your hand is up.
Good evening, everybody. This is Lauren Ferris. I'm the historic preservation planner, and I just wanted to chime in. I just wanted to kind of echo exactly what Nick was saying, that, as we're going through the site plan conditions, we'll be able to kind of give that level of flexibility for the project team to be able to find a way to use the original sign. And if there are challenges, especially as, was echoed about the Arva property just up there on Route 50, we'll try and figure out what we can do to make it work. And I appreciate Ms. Foster pointing out the educational component to it, because in 20 years, people aren't going to know exactly what was there before or why that 50 is there. So it would be nice to come up with an educational component so people understand the story. I just wanted to point that out. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If there aren't any other questions, we do have two people waiting for public comment. Bernie Byrne, I understand you're on, and can you?
Mr. Ventrone had a comment or a question you wanted to ask.
Yeah.
Bernie, hold on just a second.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. First, on the CAF units, I know we'd all like to do family units, but we have a significant senior housing problem. And if these are going to be one bedroom, this will be a great resource for senior housing. So that's just an observation. The other observation I had, I wasn't able to be at the first session, but I did watch the tape today, and there was concerns with our significant housing supply problem, why Monument didn't go to the full extent of 12 stories. And Monument said because the cost of the housing. So this is kind of a policy question, and if you can answer it, would be good. We have a national housing problem, and it's basically the cost of housing. There was an article in the Washington Post last week, the cost of building in DC is exorbitant, et cetera. So I'm just wondering, with all the additional, and I think the developer came back and upped the ante on sustainability and landscaping. I'm just wondering if the developer can ascribe a cost to the additional cost of those enhancements, vis-a-vis if we could have had more affordable housing. Is that possible?
So that's hard math to do just off the top of my head. I'll say a couple of things on that. So the Washington Post article was specifically on affordable housing and a particular project in DC where
tax credit. It was probably tax credits. But.
Right, and a particular project where the units cost $1 million. Which there you go, Doug. Even more, which is obviously difficult for people to stomach. And the Post article pointed out that this isn't one thing that's causing it. It's a sum of a lot of little things. So some of the things that we've talked about and that we've done, as you referenced, Joe, those add to it. Adding the green elements, the biophilic elements, those add to it. But you can't really point to any one of them and say, well, that's pushing up the cost of housing. In this case, the things you could point to, as Nick mentioned, the additional open space that we've provided is taking about 1,500 square feet away from building area. So that's about 2 units that are lost in order to provide the open space. And then addressing the question of if could we put more density on the site? I think the suggestion is that we would provide more open space and then go higher with what remained of the building. And the idea is it would balance out. The idea is not that we would get more units. We would just get the same number of units, but on a smaller portion of the site. And then that ties to the affordability of all this. We talked about this in the session last time. The 8-story construction, the mid-rise construction is significantly cheaper than the high-rise construction. I think the county had done a study at some point that basically concluded that 16 stories is where high-rise construction begins making sense. Only 12 stories are allowed here. So we go from 8, which possibly works on the Red Lion site, to 12, which I think probably doesn't work. And then the other benefit of this mid-rise construction is it does allow us to deliver less expensive units, which allows us to rent the units for less. And I think that's particularly important in this location. We acknowledge that we are not on top of a metro station here. We're within walking distance of a metro, but there are other buildings that are closer to the metro. There are other buildings at the top of the hill. We are at the bottom of the hill. We're 0.4 tenths of a mile away from the station. The units are going to rent for less. I don't think that's a problem. I think in the grand scheme of housing in Arlington, that's actually a good thing that we provided some sort of a spectrum between the properties at the top or the properties in central Rosslyn and the properties down here. But in order to do that, the construction has to be cheaper to match the slightly cheaper rents.
Okay.
Hopefully some of that answered your question.
Yeah, no, it does. Nevertheless, I commend you for the development. You're markedly improving the area there, along with the Red Lion facility. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay, Bernie Byrne, I think we're ready for you now.
2 minutes.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, you
We
can.
can.
Okay, thank you. The present conceptual plant list is quite short. It was made shortened recently. Please add common milkweed and Sclepia syriaca to the list. This is the only plant on which monarch butterflies prefer to lay eggs and which survives well in Arlington's natural areas. So it's important to plant common milkweed there. Shouldn't be hard, we shouldn't add any expense really. Also, surround all plantings with low fencing or elevate them to protect the plants from trampling and dogs. This often is not done, so please make sure you add that protection around on the street level and other levels too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bernie, thanks very much. And Stuart Stein?
Yeah, I'm very familiar with this because there's been a lot of talk about the plan, but I was there for 5+ years on an awful lot of days. And it was initiated by Kerry Johnson. The main goal of it was stopping the Northport Meyer Heights area from being swallowed up by Rosslyn and Courthouse. It was a follow-on to the in-between stuff and between Wilson and Clarendon. It was to preserve a neighborhood that was neither Rosslyn nor Courthouse, an area that was marked by historic garden apartments. Most important example being Wakefield Manor. We very much wanted to celebrate Fairfax and, more importantly, Arlington Boulevard as a boulevard. But through the years, that unfortunately was lost. It was a neighborhood of townhomes, garden apartments, some single-family homes, all of these things, and townhouses and things, but all of these things were lost at an alarming rate, including a number of small and medium-sized multifamily buildings. And I think this reminds you of some of that. After an intense 5-year+ process, we, as I said, lost a lot of our hopes for Fairfax Drive and Arlington Boulevard. But this was to remain a separate and distinct area from the surrounding high-density metro core. We knew the whole block wasn't developed. It was going to be a very difficult site, this remainder. And 125 feet was not a goal. It was a maximum that we negotiated to get the preservation area, which worked out. The affordable housing, I'll just say, the affordable housing is great to see. And the working with HLRB would have been important to a lot of people, including Chris Zimmerman. And she's absolutely right about the idea of garden apartments, green, and access to courtyard or something. And we had originally had some hopes of somehow connecting that to Fairfax as a much more important area. But unfortunately, we ended up with a little bit of a wall here on Fairfax. This, which part of it, I think is very good.
Your time has expired. Thank you very much. All right, unless there are any urgent statements that need to be made, we've saved ourselves about half an hour. This will come before the Planning Commission and the board in early September. And we hope to see all of you there. Anything else? Great. Thank you very much. We're adjourned.